Well, thank you for taking the time to listen again to ShrimpsNet. If this is your first time, welcome along. This is ShrimpsNet, which is the podcast from the Shrimps Trust. Tonight we are playing it's a version of all our yesterdays, the usual discussions from games in the past week. So we'll be talking about Wycombe and also about Hartlepool. And joining Joel and I, we have two long-term fans this week. First of all, local business guru and massive Shrimps fan, we have Michael Gibson, who we all know affectionately as Posh. Welcome along, Posh.
There you go.
And also we have a local educational specialist, also a massive Shrimps aficionado, Matthew William Deighton. Welcome along, Matt.
Buongiorno tutti.
Oh, you see, he thinks he's winning the Giro d'Italia on his bike now, so that's good effort. Starts with me to go on. It's been a strange old week. Here we are in League One, enjoying life. Every week we say, well, you know, it's been exciting every week. Joel, I'll start with Wycombe. That was some game, that.
I know, yeah. It's just kind of going from so many extremes within the game several times. Obviously, kind of you go, oh my God, you know, we're 2-0 up at, you know, a side who are probably going to be at least in contention for the playoffs, and then to go 3-2 down, have the misery of that, and then Jonah Ayunga coming on, hitting that absolutely brilliant equaliser, and then all the way back down to earth again with a stoppage time winner for Wycombe. So, like, yeah, it was just a game of a lot of emotions, ups and downs. It feels like that amount of up and down shouldn't really be allowed in one game. I feel like, you know, that's too much for the heart to take. Really, all that up and down should be spread out over, you know, 3 or 4 games. But no, they crammed it all into one game. But yeah, I think Stephen Robinson mentioned the other week, it's not very good for his heart, this, and I don't think it's very good for mine now either.
We keep saying every week it's like a roller coaster, and when you consider Wimbledon at home 4-3, Accrington at home 3-all, it puts Shrewsbury and Lincoln into, well, they were quite boring, despite the fact that we played quite well and they were good games. But I'll come back to you there, because when we were 2-0 up, it could have been 3 or 4, couldn't it?
Yeah, I know. Like, Phillips has a good chance. There's obviously one ruled out for offside. I mean, it was offside.
It was,
not bemoaning that, but you know, if the run had maybe been timed a bit better, the pass come a little bit early. You know, who knows? And you know, there was a few moments in the final third as well that, you know, there could have been a little bit of better decision making, and we might have seen another goal. And also, what I did notice, actually, there were quite a lot of long shots. I don't know if that was an instruction because of the rain, or because everybody was feeling quite confident about shooting from range after Stockton put one away from range on Tuesday. But yeah, you know, maybe a little bit of better decision making. You know, it could have been more. You know, I thought we looked organised in the first half. You know, and they didn't really have much despite having a bit of the ball. And when we pinched it in midfield, we were really, really threatening on that kind of on that kind of counter. And then I thought we moved the ball nicely on the deck as well. And I thought we probably could have done that a little bit more. But I do appreciate against Wycombe, they're probably going to, you know, they'll be right up in your faces and not letting you pass it in quite the way that you wanted it to. But, you know, it was a good performance first half. Just a shame about how things went in the second.
Yeah, and I'll come to Posh now. One thing I touched on, we scored 3 goals away from home, and Cole didn't get any of them.
Yeah, well, I think that shows the quality of the team that we've got. I think we're starting to really see the game expand and bring more players into it. You know, obviously Adam Phillips, we know, can score goals from last season, but you've got players like, you know, Ayunga, who's come into the side now again after his injury, who can score goals, and it's great to see different people on the score sheet. I think that shows for the team. I genuinely believe, picking up from Joel's point though, 3-0 game over. You know, I don't think they would have recovered from that. And at 2, all you had to do was keep that game tight. And then for Kyle to let it through his hands, I think it was a bit of a story of goalkeeping blunders, I think, both on Saturday and then on Tuesday. You know, it was a slight concern. I mean, Kyle's been fantastic for most of the games, but a couple of mistakes, I think, in there that he looked at and he said himself he regrets.
Matt, I'll come to you now. A lot of the blame on Saturday for us being 2-0 up and then finally losing 4-3, but at the time when we were losing 3-2, and the fingers were pointed at me because me being the idiot, I pointed out at 5-3, oh, this amazing stat. Joe Jacobson scored 5 times directly for a corner for Wigan.
Yeah, I was a bit worried when you text that. It was weird. I mean, I was watching the game. I was following it on Gillette Soccer Saturday, and I had tweet alerts coming in. And it got to the point when we were 2-0 up, I was like, we need to put this. Yeah, how confident are you at 2-0? Well, I'd rather we get the third before the second. But we're getting tweet updates, and I'm not looking at the tweet updates. I'm just staring at the screen, waiting for that 30-second delay, wondering if it's going to pop up. Wickham 1, Morecambe 2, and then when it did, it wasn't a surprise. I don't think when they got the 92nd minute winner, because I thought we either go for a win or we lose. We don't draw, do we? So
No.
it's like, and we'd had 3 different goal scorers, and I said to you, it's all right. Cole hasn't got his goal yet. We'll be all right,
True.
you know. But yeah, really, it's hard to take. You don't like a 92nd minute defeat, do you? It's horrible.
Yeah, but the problem is 2 of them. You know,
Yeah.
after fair enough, you can forgive 1 in the season, but 2, I mean, painful. I mean, a certain word was used relentlessly after that minute, after that goal. I mean, just shouting and shouting and shouting. You know, but
yeah,
you know, we've got to learn, and there's a few things I think we can learn from it as well. You know,
the thing is, and it's easy. With hindsight is a wonderful thing. But I know maybe Joel was alluding to the fact that a lot of people said a younger should have passed to either Cole or whoever it was who was open in front of goal, but he had a shot, but he just scored from beating 3 men and smashing it in the top corner. Why wouldn't he shoot? Now, he had a strong shot, the keeper saved it, it was straight at him, they rolled it out, went up the other side. So you're thinking, well, do we settle? I would have settled for 3 apiece, all of us would. Even from 2-0 up, you'd have said, well, it's our joke, isn't it? You know, 2-0 up, I'll take a draw, you know, because we're fatalist. But at 3 apiece, when a younger gets that goal, you're thinking, everybody sat there going, right, calm down. And we didn't. We just carried on going. And so did they. But I suppose that's what makes us exciting to watch, Joel.
Yeah, you know, I think on that Younger moment, I think there was quite a lot of immediate negative reaction to him. And I can understand why, because obviously in the moment you feel upset and you're angry at what's just happened. But obviously, really, the damage had already been done that game, really. Like, you know, we were 2-0 up and we'd gone 3-2 down at one point. You know, you can't really lay the blame towards a striker not passing and shooting in a certain situation. In fairness, it opened up quite nicely for the shot. I didn't think Cole was necessarily the best pass either. I thought McCalmont was the one on the other side of the area. He looked in really good space. But yeah, I think, you know, as Stephen Robinson alluded to, you know, it's not just about that decision. It's about working hard to make it back. And, you know, in fairness to the referee and Joe Jacobson, Cooney tried to put in the mother of all tactical fouls, and it half worked, didn't quite work. Obviously, he should have leathered them a bit harder and claimed his traditional yellow card. Unfortunately, he didn't. But, you know, it's frustrating, but, you know, we just got to move on from it, really, and hope that the players learn from those kind of moments of decision making, you know, keeping it tight and seeing games out properly.
I want to come to what Posh said, though. I like that Kyle Leathern went on Twitter and stuck his hand up straight away and said, look, you know, we all have bad days and blah, blah, blah. But I'll take what you said, Posh, because the simple fact is you're absolutely right. He's never put a foot wrong, has he? Since we signed him last January, he's been absolutely faultless.
Yeah, I remember York fans. So I've got a good mate who's a York fan, and he just said, you know, he makes a mistake. He makes fantastic saves, but he also makes a mistake every game, and that just hasn't materialised with us at all. And I remember when he left Chesterfield, Chesterfield fans were like, yeah, whatever, you know, wasn't anything special. And yeah, he's got that kind of bit of a great sense, weird and wonderful sense of humour. He's he's a big character. I think he's wonderful, probably, you know, to have around in the dressing room. And yet that honesty, you know, and that humour, you know, everybody remembers post obviously the moment at Wembley when he didn't punch him, obviously, and you know, and he's been joking and winding up Newport fans ever since about that, you know, and it's, but he is that kind of player who you'd rather have in the team than not, and he's got that big character and he's got that big save in him as well.
And I think the one thing that's become apparent is that Jock obviously played in goals at Hartlepool on Tuesday night, but the general consensus among fans anyway is that Kyle Leatheran's actually a better communicator because he's got the age behind him and he can shout at people. Jock being 19 and being on loan, you can kind of understand why he's not quite as vociferous.
You don't want to be critical of any of the, the keepers really. I mean, God, it's, who would want to be a keeper kind of thing. But especially when you look at some of the incidents this season. Obviously, Michael Smith's goal from Rotherham. Could he done more about that free kick against Wimbledon where he got beat from a free kick on the side of the box? There's a lot of moments in that game where you can see that. Okay, fair enough. Kyle deserves his spot as number one, really. Now it's a case of hopefully, and I think Kyle will just come back in the next game and come back stronger because he's used to these things in his career, and he understands that, and he'll make up for it. I'm sure he will.
And it's funny with that with Anderson as well. Like he comes off the back of that Sheffield Wednesday game, and that where he was monumental. He didn't make a ton of amazing saves, but what stood out to me from that Sheffield Wednesday game was how kind of he seemed to have got on a bit of a better handle on commanding the area, and what really stood out from that game was all the cross catches and dominating in that kind of way. And he's away an international break. We come back, and then first 5 minutes against Wimbledon, that free kick from the side. I don't know if maybe Cole unsighted him a little bit, jumping in front of him.
Well, he got a touch, did Cole, didn't he? Just slight, but
yeah. And then I don't know if that just kind of rattled him a little bit. It's amazing how these things can work. How much it can maybe it's the psychology of it. And then from that point he has a difficult game and he's not quite commanding his area as much. It's just kind of amazing. I wonder if there was a certain trigger moment that kind of took him from the performance against Sheffield Wednesday to kind of what's happened afterwards. I mean, it's a shame because we know he's got the quality. It's just getting in that right headspace to be able to produce it.
He's clearly got bags of talent, hasn't he? Like you say, the Sheffield Wednesday game sticks out. The couple of games he had on loan at us when Derek Adams was with us, he was fantastic. And like you say, he's 19. You don't want to keep, we don't want to dig him out too much. He's learning his trade. If you're in midfield learning your trade at 19 and you make a sloppy pass, you get a roasting off the guy next to you and you move on. Whereas that position is brutal, isn't it? You make that mistake and you it's magnified 10 times and everybody's on your back. So I think he's young enough and confident without being arrogant enough to bounce back from it and hopefully become a superstar, because I think he's got the talent. And
he's certainly he fits well into the all goalkeepers are mental sort of. And even Kyle said that. Kyle said, "Oh, he's a fantastic character." So and they get on really well. So we'll move on to Hartlepool because yet again we come to Jock because obviously he had one moment in the second half which he won't want to talk about again, will he? I don't know what he was doing there, do you, Joel?
No, and I mean, it's amazing to talk again about kind of confidence, because obviously the first one, he rolls it on the floor. I don't know how much of the game you've seen, but on the extended highlights, it's not on the short highlights, but he rolls one out to the edge of the area, kicks it, gets closed down, it comes off the Hartlepool player, bounces off the post, out, and then a few minutes later, what does he do? He tries to boot it out of his hands, slices it, and then concedes the penalty. It's amazing just how and I don't think that slice kick happens if he doesn't roll the ball out and have it deflected onto the post. It's just amazing how it can kind of affect your judgment. But yeah, it was one of those games where obviously it's worth remembering the final result of it. Well, at the end of the 90 minutes was a draw, and we got some minutes into players who, they needed it. Whether it is kind of more fringe players like Jacob Mensah and Callum Jones, or players on like Shane McLaughlin, who, especially because of the international break, is going to go a really long time without being able to play a game because of his suspension. And obviously, Ayunga needed 90 minutes. But it's, so from those perspectives, it's really positive to kind of, they're the positives I take from the night. I haven't watched the whole game back yet, but it sounds like Callum Jones had a good game, which is good because, and like he's playing in deep midfield, which is important because obviously Toombs has been playing there. And if heaven forbid something happened to Toombs, I think I kind of assumed it because of some things I heard about him and the fact that he's got the number 6. But, what does that necessarily mean? That could just be me reading too much into it. But I kind of assumed he might be the holding midfielder that would come in if Toombs was injured. But we're yet to really blood him that much in that kind of position. So it was good for him to get a run out there. And obviously, young Connor Pye making his debut, which was really, really good to see. Obviously, Freddie Price has had a bit of success making his debut in that competition last season. It's nice to see somebody else be able to make their debut as well.
How did Connor Pye get on? Like I said, I've seen the highlights of the game.
He got man of the match.
Did he?
He got man of the match, did Connor Pye. And we're fortunate enough that we went, some of us went to Workington and went to Kendal and seen him twice. And he's diminutive, but he certainly has. And apparently he grew, the bits I saw, he grew into the game. He looked a bit unsure for 15, 20. But then again, you've got to put it into, they're a pretty decent League Two side. Credit to them. It was absolutely filthy night, blowing a blooming hoolie. And he acquitted himself really well from what I've seen. And everybody said, yeah, he got man of the match and he deserved it. And as you said, Joel, Callum Jones did himself no harm. And so did Freddie Price. Those were the 3 positives. Yeah, we've got minutes for everybody else, which is good. But, and I allude to this every time because it is, the Papa John's, as was Johnston's Paint, as was, and I just call it the Tin Pot Cup. And that's not being derogatory, but it's one of those where it's a necessary evil. And even when we were, we had to go and do the radio away games, it was like a necessary evil. And we didn't take it that seriously. But Posh, credit to the 43 that made the journey on a night like that.
Oh, no, it was extraordinary. I mean, in the absolute pouring rain and everything else, there must have been a horrific journey there and back. And then obviously, in terms of the way the outcome of the game as well, with another really, really late goal in injury time again. And it's just like, well, you must have been cursing yourself after if those same fans had been at Wickham. What was really interesting was you mentioned where about the 2 saves from Yoko. Sorry, the 2 incidents with Yoko, one where obviously it bounced off him and then the other one where he slipped and played him in, and then there was the penalty. But in between those, I mean, literally, it was about 3 minutes. He pulled off an absolute worldie to push it around the corner. That on the highlights, you just think, bloody hell, that's in within about 2 minutes of it, all in about 2 minutes. Madness. It shows the nature of the game. I don't think you can learn much from it. I mean, I'm one of these who doesn't like that cup competition at all, and you got to go back to Pep Guardiola's comments about B teams and everything else. And that's an entry. It's entryism for B teams, and this is the only way currently that Premier League teams have that kind of entryism into EFL, and it's just a dangerous thing for me. I mean, I just really wish that they weren't there. It adds a bit of glamour for some young kids or whatever. They think they're going to watch Manchester United or whatever, but it's not. It's an under-18s team or whatever. But it's still entryism, and the disruption of the pyramid doesn't need those clubs.
I think I actually heard the point made. It actually might have been Alex Kenyon on a podcast I heard once, but any kids going to see the Man United under 23s, it might be an attraction because of the name, but in reality, like you say, it's not the same. And if I think Alex Kenyon, I think it was him who made the point, or it might be somebody else, that if they're good enough by 19, 20 years old, they're not playing in the they're not playing in the under 23 side. Look at Mason Greenwood, look at Marcus Rashford. They won't be in, if they were good enough, then they won't be in the under 23 side. They'd most likely be in the first team. So there's not even that much of attraction from that point if they thought about it. But obviously, some people just going to see the name and go, wow.
And I know a lot of people were saying, it'd be nice to get a win and get the 10K, but it's not 10K anymore. It was down to 8K last season. And I don't know what it is this season, but the rumour was it might get even less for a win. So the fact that we're not winning, it doesn't really matter. It's not
free money though, isn't it? It's free money. You can't turn money down.
No. And I know what you mean, but ultimately, that's the sweetener, isn't it? Against what Posh was saying, and I fully agree with that. In the fact that you get ludicrous, Serie B and the Spanish La Liga second division. You just have 5 or 6 reserve sides, and that's like, what is the point? It's just
they can't get promoted either. So
No.
it just dilutes the competition. I mean, I'm totally against B teams. The one small advantage of the B teams being in the Papa John's, JPT, whatever you want to call it, is the fact that it really the Tin Pot, the Pizza Cup, the Tin Pot Pizza Cup. But the only real advantage is the fact that it gave managers a real license to not take it seriously. Because they used to have. Do you remember they used to have these rules that they used to have like 5 or 6 members of your starting 11 from the weekend playing and starting on the weekend. And
who was it who started with the keeper and then took it off after a minute?
Was it Gary? I think it was Gary Megson who started. I think he made like a triple sub or something after about a minute.
It sounds like a Holloway thing, that, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it does. Yeah.
Megson.
That could be a subject in its own right. Crap cups of the past. I mean, cup competitions of the past. My favourite of all time is undoubtedly the Anglo-Italian Cup. Like if anybody's young, just get YouTube highlights of searching YouTube for highlights of the Anglo-Italian Cup. It was basically they used to have a tournament. It'd be like Birmingham versus Verona or something or whatever. Or
Blackpool were in it.
Yeah, Blackpool were in it. There was Oxford United play or something like this, right? And then it was like, but they basically there was an unwritten rule that there wasn't any rules, and you could just have massive fights. And there was one, I think it was Southend United, and there was like 6 players were sent off, and there were just fights every 5 minutes. It's absolutely extraordinary competition, absolutely bonkers.
They also used to have the Watney Cup, which again was very similar, and it was and obviously going back to sort of like the 80s and 90s when it was full members cup or Zenith Data or whatever it ended up being.
The Simod Cup.
It was just absolute, and me being a sort of sad Chelsea fan, we'd endured 1,000 years of not winning anything since 1970, and we got to the full members cup final at Wembley and against Manchester City, and it was 5-4 to Chelsea, and they had it on a Sunday. But they had it on a Sunday after we played Southampton and City had played United. So we had literally, Kerry Dixon got injured on the Saturday and couldn't play on the Sunday at Wembley. But it was a fantastic game. But there was 65,000 there. Yeah. And it's worth doing. So
it's still worth more than the Audi Cup.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good point, well made.
I was waiting for the Spurs day.
So normally at this point, Joel would be grilling somebody from the club. But today we've gone with the fan zone. So Joel's come up with a remarkable new idea, Joel. Run away, please.
Yes, I thought, well, obviously we've not got a game to talk about this weekend. So I thought it'd be nice to kind of go over some old memorable matches and our kind of memories from them. Because obviously everybody loves a bit of indulgent nostalgia. So we've kind of said EFL era. I think you can call it an era now because it's been 15 years. It's been almost 15 years, 14 years. And I think we've agreed to include a little bit of late conference era.
Only because that was your first season.
Yeah, I can just about scrape to a bit of conference era. So we thought we'd start off with for those who can remember, it's Southport away on Boxing Day in 2006 as a bit of a starting point because it was my first away day on Boxing Day, which was good fun, very cold in Southport, and it was memorable for quite a lot of reasons. David Perkins got sent off for 2-footing Carl Baker. Carl Baker ran rings around the defence. We were 1-0 down. We had 10 men, and we scored an equaliser. I believe it was Chris Blackburn after
Jim Bentley.
A lofted free kick drifted a good yard or so out of play, and Jim Bentley towered mightily and headed it back towards the penalty spot. And the linesman managed to miss, and Chris Blackburn slams it home. What were you saying about the winner freeze from Adam Yates? Because I can remember what happened. I can remember Yates hitting it. I can remember it going to the bottom corner.
He completely skewered it. It was a cross. It was a cross. There was I can't remember who was it when it was Matty Blinkhorn or somebody at the back post, completely unmarked, and somebody put a through ball in, and Yates went in behind, and he was at an oblique angle, and he was trying to cross it, and he just sliced it, and it went in the near post. And I think we probably took 300 or 400 that day because it was quite a good crowd being a Boxing Day, and because of the equaliser and then that scabby goal. We ended up, as you know, finishing fourth and then winning the playoffs and winning at Wembley and whatever. And a lot of it is down to that day because it was a filthy day. But we used to have a thing, Joel, that we'd all meet up at a pub, but also we'd all have hip flasks, which you could get away with in the conference. And whoever wasn't driving, we'd turn up with whatever you got for Christmas in a hip flask. So those were happy days, weren't they, gents?
They were, yeah. I also remember it's something about Southport. It just riles me. But apart from that, it's the I hate them. Southport.
Still.
But it was a couple of seasons previous. It might have even been the previous year. The linesman had another mare because the netting had come off the goal.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I remember Glenn just going absolutely bonkers about it. But just trying not to, because he thought the more angry I get at the linesman for not looking,
the
less he's going to look. So he's trying to be really, really reasonable. Linesman, I know you don't believe me, but I'd really like you to just go to the foot of that post and just check. Honestly.
It is, if you look back at games like that, fantastic times. But you look at where we are this season, and it does seem like a lifetime ago, doesn't it?
I think everybody needs to remember that before our rivalry, arguably, we're now with Accrington, that's been going on and simmering for a long time. It really was Southport before that. I remember a couple of games. There was a Boxing Day game when we were in the conference, and what was it? The attendance was over 3,000.
3,500.
Yeah, for a Boxing Day game in the conference. And even back to the Northern Premier League days, I mean, numbers were ridiculous in terms of people turning up. But who was I should know, these names got in my head. Who was my all-time least favourite worst player ever to play for Morecambe?
Alan Morgan
in that one of the games at Southport. Oh my God, I've never ever seen an appearance like it.
He came on a sub and then was subbed. And he came on, we were 3-0 up. Danny Carton had scored and we were absolutely cruising the game. We were battering them all over. We were having shots of it. He came on and a one-man effort managed to completely destroy our entire mojo. We just went a penalty away and then did he either pass straight to him and he scored and then
no, he also fouled one of our own players, which let them in, right? And then we just like and every it must have been Jim Harvey. Jim Harvey was like, right, yanked him back off again, and we just from then on we just started playing beautiful football again and won the game. He was awful. We played him at Burton Albion, and it was like Burton Albion at home, and I think we were 5-0 up at the time. And absolutely, again, battering him. It's like, well, we can bring Alan Morgan on. There's no danger at all. And he managed to score a 30-yard own goal.
Own goal, yeah.
30-yard own goal and managed to nearly give away a penalty and a load of other stuff. And he was awful that game.
It's starting to remind me of the. It sounds like I think we can christen that a Tom Naylor. If you remember,
yeah.
Didn't he want? I don't know if this is genuinely true, but did he once come like semi-high up in
third
player of the season?
Third in player of the season. Yeah.
For anybody listening who can't remember the trials of Tom Naylor, in one single season against us,
Newport at Rodney Parade.
Yeah, it was Newport at Rodney Parade, and
both games.
Yeah, both
home
games.
and away. Yeah.
The first one we were 2-1, 2-0 down. I think he scored his own goal and conceded a penalty. Was it 2 own goals? I can't remember.
No, it was an own goal, a penalty, and then he got sent off.
and we won the game 3-2. And then coming back to the Globe Arena as it was at the time, we were one. I remember this because I was at that game. We were 1-0 down, and I think Kev goes through on goal, and there's just this little kind of clipping of the heels from Naylor. And obviously, Kev's like, he's going to go down in that situation all day. So he goes down. Naylor, once again, sent off. We win 4-1. So one of those days. So I don't know. Moving on from the Southport game, will we indulge in one more conference game, which I think might have to be the Wayne Curtis game against York City.
Against York City, yeah.
In the playoff semis.
Right, yeah.
There's a tear to my eye.
Yeah.
It was quite something.
It was. We were all celebrating and laughing our heads off, if you remember, because obviously, I can't remember who put. It might have been Adam Yates again who put the cross in, but it hit Wayne in a very particular area and then went in the top corner.
I think my favourite bit of that is the celebrations afterwards, and Tomo's trying to get the physio on, but can't for laughing.
You know what? I think we might have gotten mixed up with
I got mixed up with the game.
I'm thinking of the playoff final, the playoff semi-final. You're thinking of the one where he gets hit in
the league game.
The league game. I don't think
that's far more memorable.
Yeah, what you know, when he said it brings a tear to your eye, I was thinking emotional, not kind of empathizing with pain. But yeah,
the weird thing is, you remember that game more for the for Clayton Donaldson's horrendous assault on Stephen Drench. I mean, that's why we all remember that game, surely.
I know, exactly. It was a terrible, terrible thing to leave Stephen Drench with a dislocated elbow. Although, actually, speaking seriously on that incident, I think it's amazing because looking back at it, Stephen Drench really should have been sent off, probably. He absolutely battered it. And he only didn't get sent off because he falls down.
Because he's injured,
injures his elbow. So, like, you know, it is funny how these things work. But, you know, and I can see why the ref didn't feel like he wanted to go up to Drench, who's lying. I think he was on the stretcher at that point when he got taken off. And to go, sorry, mate.
Yeah. You'd have to be mean-hearted, wouldn't you?
But the great circular thing about football is, what was that now? 14 years ago, and Clayton Donaldson is back playing at York City.
Yeah,
he scored 2 at the weekend.
And Stephen Drench retired last season.
He did, he did. And it's funny, isn't it? Because you look at the York side in that semi-final, and they had Manny Panther, Steve Bowie. They had a really, really, really good side for conference. And as you just said, Clayton Donaldson had a fantastic career at sort of like Crewe and Hibernian, and scored goals all over the place. And so you're thinking, how did we manage to win that? Well, it was Wayne Curtis, and I think I'll have a shot. Oh, keeper saved it, but it's come back to me. I'll have another shot. Oh, keeper saved it. It's come back to me. Hang on a minute. I'll chip him with my left foot.
Yeah, astonishing.
Simultaneously, the worst and the best goal I think I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like,
defending is awful.
Yeah, because they're all stood behind the keeper. And then when they finally go out, he's like, fantastic. I don't even know what would have been running through his head at that time, but it was quite something. It was quite something that.
I think it's worth adding, after the comments, obviously, that we've suffered the losses against Wycombe and Wimbledon, just the 4-3s, that it's worth reminding ourselves that we haven't really been on the end of that scoreline for a long time. We've been the ones who've inflicted it. And, you know, if you think about great games that we've had over the last 10 years or so or more, you know, I mean, the Oval game where Alex Kenyon, I think, took that game right at the end by the scruff of the neck, because, you know, we didn't want to throw it away, and he actually bombed down the wing, bizarrely, whipped that ball in, and Kev's amazing header over the keeper. That was a cracker. Then the other one was me and Matty being quite vocal at the Chesterfield game, and 3-0 down. 3-0 down on the famous Globe Arena bookie, who just got inundated with bets because everybody knew that we came back and won every game that we were losing at half time. And what an amazing comeback that was. But nothing, I mean, 4-3 games, but still, I mean, nothing ever beats the Crewe game. I mean, that was utterly astonishing. It's still the best, I think, probably. I mean, there's other games in terms of the value and what the outcome was, but that game was just astonishing. It was the best game I've ever seen in Morecambe. I would say so.
It is strange, isn't it? Because you look back at that and you think you remember it rightly, and Andy Parrish got sent off with 15 minutes left, and it was 3-1. And you're like, oh, crikey. But he got sent off, and they gave a free kick. And from the free kick, it smashed into the wall, and he gave a penalty for handball. And then Barry saved the penalty at 3-1 down. We still only had 10 men. and there was 12 minutes left.
Just
We
as a
got-
quick side
And
note,
at that point, Lammy walked out and went to your hotel.
do you know? And by the way, do you know who was taking the penalty for Crewe that day?
Sean
Yes,
Miller.
I do.
Yeah.
Sean Miller.
Sean
Yeah.
Miller.
Well, you got to bear in mind. So what the story was with that was it was Dave Artell who missed his tackle, which meant that Andy Parrish had to go bombing down the thing, and then it was Dave Artell who went and handballed it in the box to give away the penalty. But then it was Dave Artell who went to Barry Roach and says Sean Miller always sticks it that way. And Barry went down and he saved it. So, and then obviously he contributed with, at the end of the game. So it was, So, it was, I mean, so potentially 4-1 down with 15 minutes to go. And you just like.
And
10 men. And yet, we saved the penalty and went on and won it. But you realise then again is that how late the goals came, Wayne's goal, I think, was 83. 87th.
I think it was 87th. I might have to go and double check this now. Oh, it won't let me. But
they were all over the place from every set piece. They were all over the place.
Oh, they just gone, haven't they? Me and you were at the back of the North Stand, just going. Their heads have gone. Their heads have absolutely gone. We're gonna, and both of us were going. We're gonna win this. We're gonna win this. And this is like 92nd minute. We're going. We're gonna win this. It's bonkers, but we were.
It was crazy. And
wave after wave. It was awesome.
There's that fantastic picture of Moose when he's run down and that bloke's giving him his glasses and he's there going like.
I think I was listening to a podcast. It was a few months ago over summer, and it was the Football Cliches podcast. If anybody ever listens to it, and they did an episode with the football writer Jonathan Wilson, and he said something in which I felt really resonated with my feelings on that game, which was that. In football, you sometimes get these moments where you of kind of fate and inevitability, and exactly like something happens, and you like this is happening, isn't it? There's nothing that can possibly stop this because as soon as Curtis gets that goal for 3-2 in the 87th minute, there's barely any time left, but you're like, we're at least getting a draw out of this. You just know. This kind of, I mean, I'm for Crewe fans. I mean, it's gone against us in some ways. There's been games where a team gets a goal back and you think, oh my god, they're going to come back, aren't they? That it's going to happen, and the Crewe fans may well have been feeling that on the day as well. But Curtis gets that goal and there's that kind of building momentum, and I think. Like you said, there was just wave after wave, and then there's some extended highlights on YouTube of that. If anybody ever wants to have a little reminisce over that, but I think. The two corners came from not kind of scabby little deflected crosses, but they came from like really fierce attempts from the edge of the area that were tipped over the bar by the keeper. Yeah. So it was really something. I remember. We've spoken a lot about Wayne Curtis, but I think that was another game that Wayne Curtis had quite an effect on, with just a kind of bulldozing, physical, just not particularly graceful, but just momentum going forward.
Yeah, he was when he had his head on. He was absolutely brilliant with Wayne.
Yeah, fantastic.
I'll give a quick shout out because obviously Stuart Ray does a fantastic job on Facebook of reminding us of those games, and I think Chesterfield popped up this week, didn't he? And you just like reading the report that he does, and you're just thinking, oh my god, look, that was 10 years. That was 8 years ago. That 8 seasons ago. And I was like, if you'd have asked me, I'd have said 5 years ago, but just shows you how fast time goes, doesn't it, really?
Well, I sponsored that one, and I think we all we had quite a few drinks before the game, and we're enjoying ourselves rather a lot. And then, Matty, you got to tell the story about what Paul Cook said afterwards to you, after they'd lost 4-3, yeah.
We'd been hammering him all game, because obviously he's near us, and they've got 3-1, and we're going, Kookie, Kookie! And he turned around and looked at us, and we wave at him with a couple of fingers and stuff, and it's all right. And he starts like chopping and changing. Obviously, the result goes our way in the last minute, and it's fantastic. And we're all bounced downstairs. And we're in JB's, stab his neck, and he comes in and he's there with Jimbo, and was it Jimmy Bell who was with?
No, there was quite a group of them. So Coley was there, and Gary, what's his name? He used to be at Tranmere.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it'll come to me. Carry on.
Yeah. So they're obviously all on a night out that night, but they're all chatting, and they come over and chatting with them, and they were like, Cookie just looks at us, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I brought a defensive player on. I never make defensive substitutions. You lot got in my head. Like, come on, I'm having that.
But am I right? My memory suggests he let the team coach go, and he was going back to Liverpool, and him and Coley and Jim and Gary, can't remember his name, were all going out on the lash in Liverpool, weren't they?
Yeah, it was a good night because they were really talkative. They just spent hours in JB's afterwards, and they were just drinking loads, and we were nattering some all night. It was great fun.
So a big shout out to Stuart Ray for doing what he does on Facebook, because he does his research and it's fantastic. I could now, for those who are watching on YouTube, I have a picture of the old Lancaster Road stand behind me, if you can't see us, and there was a game probably in about 1993 or something like that. I'm going back a long way, yeah. And we actually, when we were doing the fanzine, the cover was 5 old gentlemen who were obviously minors, 49ers, and they had massive hair and massive beards. And it was a black and white photograph. And the caption on the front that Glenn came up with was, members of the Marine We Won't Shave Till We Win at Christie group. Because Marine hadn't beaten us at Christie Park since about 1958. And this was about 1992, 93, and it was Northern Premier League Cup. Marine were top, we were about 4th. They came to Christie Park, they were 3-0 up, they were battering us, absolutely battering us. And it was Caney, Coley, Steve Alden, that sort of era. And probably John McMahon, to be honest. And we pulled one back with about 10, 12 minutes left. And Marine just went, ugh. And Steve Alden, literally, Caney crossed it for Coley, he scored. Somebody else scored, and I think John McNally scored. And then Steve Alden just ambled onto the ball about 30 yards out, beat 3 men, smashed it in top corner, and we won 4-3. There was only about 200 there, but that still sticks in the memory. If you were there that night, you'll remember it, because we were getting battered. We never got a kick. And literally, we'd just done the fanzine with the Marine no shave till we win at Christie, and I was thinking, well, that's a cock up, isn't it? And we ended up with it. So, happy days. That was for the oldies there.
Yeah, talking of comebacks, though, obviously this isn't 4-3, but I feel if we're looking back at some of the great comebacks that we've seen, I think the one against Peterborough that made Peterborough break their transfer record it was December 2007, around then, when we were 2-0 down at half time. I think Dave Artell gets sent off, and then we come back 3-2 up. I think Carl Baker just beat Carl Baker.
That header from corner was a bullet header, absolutely brilliant.
And yeah, just amazing. And the main shout out from that game, of course, it has to go to Joe Lewis, who was capping off an absolutely phenomenal loan spell with us on loan from Norwich, I believe it was. So much so he had such an amazing performance that I think that was his last game for us, I believe, and then goes straight back to Norwich, and Peterborough break their transfer record. I think it was 400k they paid for him.
400,000, yeah.
A few days later, just amazing.
But do you remember the game at London Road? We'd gone down to. And,
yeah, you're going to talk about the save, aren't you? Yeah.
He pulled off one of the most amazing saves I've ever seen. Yeah. Certainly the best save I've ever seen at a game live. To the point where half the Peterborough fans behind the goal were up celebrating.
Yeah.
And a fair few of them caught themselves up half celebrating, watched the save, and just had to applaud it. It was off the scale good.
We were looking straight down the ground, and it was Mackhal Smith, ex-Dagenham and Redbridge, fantastic player, and he just climbed up in the box, and as he went to hit the headed ball, there was nobody. The goal was completely empty. You couldn't see Joe Lewis at all from where we were, and he'd obviously just gone onto the side of the box, and he just went across at a speed unlike anything and dived, and the save was just extraordinary. But bear in mind, at the time we were wearing dinner jackets, bow ties and monocles at this point, because my little lad was, Liam Gibson, was it was his head wetting. So my nickname's Posh. So obviously we went for Posh at Posh.
Dress Posh.
Yeah. And there was all those going berserk wearing monocles and bow ties.
Yeah, it was a good day, that. And like you say, it's funny you should mention that, because when Joel mentioned Joel Lewis, I always remember that save, because that was the best save I've ever seen live.
Yeah, it was extraordinary.
And the entire ground was like, "Yeah,
Oh.
how's he done that?" And even we were like, "How's he saved that? That was amazing." So the strange thing is that in years to come, we'll probably be talking about, well, at least half a dozen of the games that we've had already this season in League One, won't we?
I know, yeah. You look at your Sheffield Wednesdays, and it's been quite a ride already this season, hasn't it? But hopefully, some of those comebacks and last-minute winners, they're going to start going in our favour.
Yeah.
I
tell you what I've enjoyed watching as well. Some of the player reactions to certain games. Greg Lee was doing his absolute nut when we beat Sheffield Wednesday. He was bouncing around like Tigger on speed. It was fantastic. It was really like see him so happy, so he's almost got you happy. Well, he did get me happy next time. I was like, wow, look at him, he's great. And Anthony O'Connor the other day, when after Woodland scored,
yeah, all
the players went off in one direction, and he was stood on his own, just spinning around, jumping and spinning around, just going, come on! And I was just like, because it's like a drunk friend dancing on his own in a disco. But it was superb to see it, and it's like, oh wow, there's clearly a spirit within the team, that.
I think that bond in the same way as last season's growing, but bearing in mind how many new players we brought in, 17, 18 new players and everything else. I mean, that's the one thing that, 4-3 defeats and all those kind of things and, whatever. But we're mid-table. It could have been so easily higher. And the one thing that you've got confidence in is that all these players are getting to know each other and all these players are being worked on, and everything else. And you're seeing players gradually change. I mean, a couple of them, Wes McDonald, looks great on the ball. Chorley, running through things, but didn't seem to have a defensive ounce in him. And then, and similarly in the first few games, and he's getting dropped, and he's coming on from the bench and stuff. When was it? Not the Wickham game, the one before. But where he was,
Lincoln.
He was dropping deep. He was putting the tackles in. He was making the effort and everything else. You've seen, right? That's a player who I know has got massive potential, but I can see huge progress in him. Arthur as well, I think he's really blossomed.
King Arthur,
yeah. But you see, like what Bolton fans thought. He's a player who plays in fits and bursts, and that's what he was like with us. It might have been like he had a little spell for 5 minutes in this game and 5 minutes that game. And there's Sheffield Wednesday, I think it was Sheffield Wednesday, when he just had that 15 minutes where he was just untouchable. But all of a sudden, he just seems to be that's those spells in a game are becoming bigger and longer and more influential and impactful, and they constantly seem to be working on him to make that contribution through the full 90. And he just seems much more of a stronger player than you saw at the start of the season. And I think, you can see that in others as well. It's just some of those basic defensive lapses. And I think that's not more about individual players. I think that's just more about working together. There seems to be a lot, like in that Wickham game, like gaps between the defence and the midfield sometimes that opened up, allowed them space where they shouldn't have had it, that kind of thing. But individual players just seem to have made so much progress. And you can only see a brighter future for us, really.
Yeah, it's pretty positive, isn't it? Sorry, Joel, go on.
No, I was just going to say, theoretically, and when you look at clubs like Ipswich, you can kind of see it more dramatically. This should really be our weakest point because of the amount of new players that we've gotten on board. It is kind of the opposite of those early Jim Bentley seasons when you get a lot in at the start of summer, then work a lot over that. But we've had 19 players come in, so they were always going to take a bit of time to gel. I think, looking at some of the underlying numbers, they have improved a little bit over the last kind of few games, and we've kind of gone from a kind of relegation bothering side underlying numbers wise to kind of mid-table, lower mid-table, which is really positive because it does show that these signings are starting to gel a bit more, and we're seeing it in the kind of in the goal and assist returns. Other players chipping in, like you've mentioned, the Hua, King Arthur. He's had a couple of lovely crosses providing for assists. Phillips is getting a bit more involved. McLaughlin's chipped in with a goal. We have Wildig make an assist on his one appearance. McDonald's got an assist under his belt now. So there are, there are more players being able to chip in. Even, McCalmont getting off the mark and having having an assist against Lincoln as well. So, seeing all that kind of come together is so positive. And I think we've probably been quite lucky in the fact that Cole Stockton has just been in unbelievable form to be able to help kind of take us over that period where everybody was still gelling.
Yeah,
have him banging a few goals over that period. We've probably got more points than we might have expected to, and now the team's gelling a bit more. Obviously, hopefully the defence will be able to organise a bit more and avoid those lapses. But we're seeing the productivity going forward from around the team now.
It's a strange one because, and there's a lot of people who listen will not understand this, but then hopefully there will be plenty of people who listen who do, in the fact that it's very, very similar to the early years of Jim Harvey in the conference, where he put a side out that if you scored 3, we'd score 4. And then one season, well, it was actually this. I remember the season. It was the season when we went full time. Jim suddenly decided that I'm going to change the way we play. We're going to try not to concede anything in the first 20 minutes and grind it out. And then if you score, then we'll have to come out and play. And do you remember those days?
Oh yeah. I remember Jim Harvey was it was just bonkers football sometimes with him. Like you said, all the Alan Morgan stuff.
Yeah.
And who was his next door neighbour? Was that Alan Morgan? Was his next door neighbour?
Yeah, it was his next door neighbour. Yeah, unsurprisingly, I think he had photos. But that's what this season reminds me of. It reminds us when we went to the conference, we had no idea whether we would survive or not, and the players we had. All when we spoke to them, they played for us for years. People like Johnny Norman, who's behind Posh there, and they were all like, "This division's really hard." People like Caney and Coley and Paul Tomlinson, and Robbie Armstrong. They all went, "This division's really hard. There's some really good players," and so we were like, But if you remember that first season, did we lose 5-4 at home to Junior Hunters Woking? He got hat-trick, and then Carl Alford was bagging him in for Kettering, and I think we beat Kettering 5-3 or something like that after being 2-0 down or something like that.
That was a bonkers season.
Yeah, that reminds me of this season.
Yeah,
we're just like, go for it.
There's a true story there. Well, this was my dad, who I could never get to come and watch Morecambe, and because I was coming back from university, he'd come to watch games with me and things like that. So we beat Sheffield City in the FA Cup 7-1, I think it was.
Yeah,
and then we beat somebody 6-2.
Gainsborough.
Yeah, Gainsborough and John Coleman scored the fastest hat-trick in the FA Cup history.
Yeah.
Then we beat then we beat Altrincham 5-3.
Yeah.
And then my dad had been to every game, and my dad was loving it because we'd scored 8 goals for 3 games in a row. and then he came back on his own after I'd gone back to university. We beat Dover 4-1. He said, "We only scored 5 goals. I'm not going again."
Yeah, happy days. That's what this reminds me of. So the people who were around at the early seasons of the conference, 95, 96, 97, were Jim Harvey's salad days, really, because everybody was part-time other than the odd club. And Jim just took it as, right, okay, we'll sign some players and we'll play. And that's when really Johnny Norman, who I say is on that picture behind Posh there, Johnny Norman came to the fore. We signed Johnny Norman when we were in the Northern Premier League, and he hardly played. But you think about Johnny Norman now, and he was such a fantastic player in those days. And that reminds me now what Cole's doing.
I think one thing that comes to mind immediately about that, and the kind of parallel is with Stephen Robinson as well, is that where he signed players from. I mean, players who've just had really bit part careers. He signed players from Bromley and all kinds of different places, and players who haven't got contracts and stuff like that. And Jim you got some of the players we've talked about. So Wayne Curtis was signed from Holker Old Boys.
Yeah.
Who God knows what league they would be in now.
They were in West Lancs League at the time.
West Lancs League now, and he found him. Gary Thompson was at Wattsfield, wasn't he? And was kind of between Wattsfield and Kendal Town. And Johnny Norman behind me was at Mould Alexandra.
Mould Alexandra.
And how we found these players? I mean, Johnny Norman turned out to be one of the best players in the league, but was in a real kind of tiny Welsh team at the time.
Yeah,
it was astonishing where we used to find players. The other thing, picking up what you said before, and what I totally agree on, is the time that all our managers, to be fair, have given to potential to talent.
Yeah.
I remember when we signed Mark Duffy. Obviously he then made it to Sheffield United and everything else. Those early days of Mark Duffy playing, he was bloody awful. That game away at Exeter, where he was down at left back, and he made this brilliant tackle, and then he passed it right across the box, which was just full of the players.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
Can I just chip in here
Sorry,
say that there may be a few faces on this that you're looking at now. Mine, not one of them. Joel, definitely not yours. That might have been a little bit. Justin Jackson is just not good enough.
Yeah. That's a strange one, because that's absolutely true, because it took Jim to say turn round and face the other way, because Justin was convinced he was a target man, and then because of John Norman, Jim Harvey just went, every time John Norman gets it, just run, he'll find you. And that was it. Jacko was like lightning over 30 yards, wasn't he? Nobody had catched him. And then all he did was he worked on his finishing. And
well, similarly, Danny Carlton, when it was a famous game against Canvey Island, and Canvey Island had these two really, really brilliant centre halves. They were both about 34, but they were, they knew the game inside out. And Danny Carlton was sitting on the line all the time against them, and it was like, and then somebody got to play the ball, and they just step up. And Danny was offside so many. Well, everybody knows how many times Danny Carlton was offside all the time. But that game, first half, he must have been offside about 10 times, because they were just doing it every time. And you could see Jim Harvey come out, arm round him, walking off the pitch, going, right, all you got to do is sit 2 yards deeper, and you'll get them every time. Second half, scores 2 goals, wins the game, and it's that kind of, you can see that kind of nurturing of talent and everything else, and teaching people and making them realize what the craft of the game is, rather than simply the developing of the talent, really.
So I'm gonna sorry, Joel, go on.
No, I was just going to say, speaking of Mark Duffy, I was one who, when we signed him permanently, I was like, what, really? After seeing him for half the season, but then it culminates in talking of comebacks, those 2 penalties he won against Torquay in all his final games for us in the last few minutes, when he just absolutely had them in knots. But yes, you were saying, Freez, because it's probably getting to that time so we don't get any complaints about how long we've gone on for.
Exactly. So I was just going to say that it's not being able to talk about anything for the weekend because of the international break. One point I wanted to make, which I thought was a strange situation. We signed Ryan McLaughlin, who had no contract and wasn't playing. He's played 3 games for us, and he's in the Northern Islands. What? Eh? I just don't get it. It's like the Stephen Robinson effect. He had no club. He wasn't playing. We signed him as what we think is cover because Kelvin Mellor's left and gone to Carlisle. So he's cover for Ryan Cooney. That's what you're thinking. Starts 3 games. Here, have an international cap. You're a friend of Stephen Robinson. I'm like, he's probably not even Irish. He's probably just had a pint of Guinness. That's it.
He's been to Stephen Robinson's for tea. That makes it eligible.
Well,
yeah, but how many Northern Ireland right backs are playing in the football league?
Well, yeah, possibly true. But I just found that amazing.
It's a niche question, that, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And it's not going to be a big number, is it? So
over to you.
And sorry, if I stick to McLaughlin, he has been around the setup before. I think he's been called up before previously. He is known to them, I think, and
he is. But how come he hasn't got a club? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing. So some of the if you can have the contacts and you know where to look, you can pick up some real gems, and hopefully, McLaughlin will turn out that way.
So we've managed to do a whole podcast and not mention, for the first time in history since he's mentioned it, the 5-game block. But damn, I've just ruined it.
Or said the words fine lines. I was quite pleased that that's not been mentioned.
Never too high, never too low.
Never too high, never too low. That's
don't let the football spoil your weekend.
Yeah. So, final thing, Joel, we've got the AGM of the Trust.
Yes, that is on the.
Thank you. I thought you were going to mention it.
Correct answer.
Sorry, correct. It's coming up. No. It's on the 21st of October. I have got that right, I believe. I guess it'd be very embarrassing if I didn't. Obviously, come down. There will be a Liam Gibson cushion being raffled off. I don't know if those of you remember how he injured himself against Blackburn, but it was a shoulder injury that didn't turn out to be as bad as we all thought it was going to be. But
did they cut the shirt off?
They cut the shirt off as a precaution because they don't like to obviously pull it over the red if they've got a shoulder injury. And it was donated to us from the club. I think it was Les who gave it over. And it has now been turned into I think it's a delightful looking cushion. I think it looks really nice. So that will be up. We'll give you some thrilling accounts details, and hopefully we'll be able to get a couple of special guests tonight for the night. So obviously keep an eye on our Facebook and Twitter, and we'll let you know what kind of any more updates with that.
What time does it start?
It starts at 7:30.
Just thought I'd mention the start times. Always good.
What time does it finish?
Well, this has been another exciting episode. Well, I hope it's been an exciting episode. I've enjoyed myself talking about all our yesterdays, but there you go. Thank you very much to our guests tonight. We've had a bit of a fan zone with myself and Joel. We're always here, but thank you to our education expert, Matt Deighton.
Thank you.
And our business guru, Mr. Michael Gibson. Thank you for joining us tonight. This has been ShrimpsNet. It's been, what's this? What are we now? Episode 15, is it?
I think it's 15, yeah.
It's 15, yeah, something like that. We'll be back next week. I don't know what we're going to talk about next week. It could be another all our yesterdays because we won't have done anything because we've got no game. But never mind, we're coming to you weekly. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed that. Join us again next week.